In Chapter 1, the Blackguard brothers Gavin and Gil Grayling wake early to alert the White, who is in prayer with her room slave, of a dangerous situation in Little Jasper Bay. Wrapped carefully in blankets, the White is wheeled to the balcony to witness the approaching sea demon. The beast surfaces near Big Jasper, moving swiftly and attacking a galley, destroying it and killing or stranding most of the crew. Gavin and Jill observe as the sea demon veers toward the Lily's stem bridge, causing chaos among the panicked civilians. The White orders Luxlord Carver Black to organize care for the wounded while she continues to watch. Suddenly, a massive black sperm whale, a natural predator of sea demons, collides with the red-hot beast multiple times, driving it away from the bridge. The White reflects that their salvation comes from this rare black whale, coinciding with the Feast of Light and Darkness equinox. In Chapter 2, Gavin Guile struggles as a galley slave, rowing for hours until his hands bleed. Strap, a burly woman, bandages his palms with a resinous superviolet Luxin treatment that fights infection. Gavin reflects on his past, including the killing of his brother Dazen and his failure to prevent the Chromaria fleet's destruction by the sea demon, leaving many enslaved or dead. He rows under the watchful guidance of fellow oarsmen, number 7 Orhalam and number 8 Fukalat, who help maintain the pace. Gavin observes the hierarchy and discipline among the Angari rowers, their sanitation practices, and the oppressive conditions in the galley. After hours of labor, Strap manacles his hands behind his back, signaling the end of his shift. Captain Gunner, the formidable and unpredictable Elysian leader of the ship, confronts Gavin, reminding him that his survival is only by Gunner's mercy and summoning him to the deck, implying further danger and a test of loyalty. In Chapter 3, Kip rows for 2 days under a blindfold, forced and monitored by his half-brother Zyman, a full-spectrum polychrome, who holds a pistol to Kip's head. His hands are blistered and raw, his body aching from injuries sustained in battle, including burns, gashes, and cannon shrapnel wounds. Kip must maintain the boat while managing his pain and conserving Luxin to survive. He carefully calculates Zyman's laziness and overconfidence, using it as an opportunity to prepare a strike, all while maintaining the pretense of exhaustion. Kip slowly channels blue Luxin through his body, hiding it under his skin to sharpen his senses and prepare for action. He plans to knock Zyman into the water, rendering the pistol useless, giving himself a chance to escape or finish him. When Zymoon momentarily reacts to an approaching galley, Kip seizes the opportunity, uses blue Luxin to remove his blindfold, and leaps, initiating his counterattack. In Chapter 4, Gavin Guile is brought onto the deck of the Bitter Cob by the pirate Captain Gunner. Gavin struggles with his loss of color and drafting ability, facing despair in the gray light of the overcast day. Gunner questions him about his identity, testing whether he is really Dazen or Gavin, and Gavin explains that he killed his imprisoned brother after assuming his place. Gunner demonstrates his mastery and eccentricity with a musket sword, firing a shot to slice an apple in Gavin's mouth, astonishing both the crew and Gavin. Gunner discusses the speed and quality of his ship and the Angari crew, explaining why it is ideal for piracy. Gavin negotiates verbally, using logic and persuasion to dissuade Gunner from harming him, claiming that killing him would provoke his father to escalate warships instead of ransom. Despite his cleverness, Gunner remains dangerously unpredictable, sending Gavin back to the oars under close supervision. In Chapter 5, Taya and a few other Blackguard inductees finish their morning exercises on the Wanderer's rear deck under Commander Ironfist's watchful eye. She reflects on the recent battle, the death of Gavin Guile, and Kip's reckless actions that night, including accidentally stabbing Gavin and jumping into the sea to save him. Taya struggles with disbelief and guilt, feeling helpless over the outcomes while observing the ship's crew and their routines. Commander Ironfist approaches and assures her that her manumission papers will be processed, emphasizing that joining the Blackguard is her choice. Taya eavesdrops on Andros Guile and his trusted slave, Grinwoody, noting their cryptic conversation about narrowly avoiding harm, which unsettles her. She clings to a vial of olive oil, a reminder of her past slavery and Kip's promise to protect her. Taya worries that Kip, after his extreme exertion and exposure, is likely alive but enslaved and chained to a galley oar, unable to act or escape. In Chapter 6, Kip launches a daring counterattack against Zyman while blindfolded on the rowboat. Using the oars, he slams into Zyman, sending him flipping into the water and disarming him. Kip draws blue Luxin, cutting his green Luxon manacles and freeing himself from the oars, then dives into the sea to escape. As Zymon fires a waterlogged pistol, Kip drafts reeds to propel himself forward, moving faster than he could swim naturally while avoiding leaving a visible wake for pursuit. He navigates toward the Eteshan coast, reaching shore exhausted but unharmed, and takes cover under trees. Observing the burning remains of their boat and the nearby galley, Kip realizes Zymon survived and may command the vessel soon. Though still vulnerable, Kip focuses on survival, securing food and water, and plotting his next moves. He knows only he holds the truth about Gavin Guile's fall, and he is determined to use that knowledge to retrieve his father from Gunnar. In Chapter 7, Zymon survives the destruction of Kip's rowboat and is picked up by a pirate galley which intends to enslave him. He hides Blue Luxon in his body to conceal his abilities and assesses the crew's intentions. When threatened, Zymon immediately uses Blue Luxon to neutralize the mate and another sailor, demonstrating his power. He then negotiates with the captain, offering to join their crew for 3 months or 3 battles, using his full spectrum abilities to guarantee their victories in exchange for safe passage to Big Jasper and a share of treasure. The captain, impressed and cautious after witnessing Zymon's abilities, agrees to the terms, binding the injured men and setting a condition that Zymon help with a particular pirate in the future. Zymon learns that this pirate is Captain Gunnar, establishing his next target while securing temporary safety and strategic advantage aboard the galley. In Chapter 8, Taya waits on the Wanderer's railing as the ship docks at Big Jasper, navigating through the crowded piers filled with sailors, merchants, and families seeking news of returning fleet members. Using her acrobatic training, she moves swiftly and undetected through the throngs. A man deliberately brushes past her, leaving a note instructing her to look in peril. Using her darkened spectacles, Taya reads floating peril messages on guards, walls, and in the market. Warnings such as bribed, hours, and directional cues. Recognizing the presence of a skilled peril drafter, potentially dangerous, she becomes wary. Realizing the messages indicate assassins are nearby. Taya flees through alleys and crowded streets, improvising a disguise with a shawl and scarf to conceal herself, while making her way toward the brewery where Magister Marta Martins had stayed. At the brewery, Taya learns Marta has left abruptly, but left a hidden peril message confirming the existence of the Order of the Broken Eye, warning Taya that assassins are now pursuing her. In Chapter 9, Gavin Guile is summoned by the White to the roof of the Prism's tower in the rain. The White, seated in her wheeled chair and shielded by Jill and Gavin Grayling, discusses the balance of her drafting powers and reflects on her mortality. Garrus expresses grief and disbelief over Gavin Guile's apparent death and the recent battle, but the White emphasizes the burdens of responsibility and the need to act despite loss. She orders Garrus to cease drafting immediately and relieves her of all blackguard duties, returning her commission. Garrus protests, questioning the White's motives and her own treatment, but the White explains her decisions were both a test and a means to develop Garrus's independence and judgment. Despite the White's dismissal from active duty, she assigns Garrus a new role to manage the White's network of spies, utilizing her intelligence and initiative, reflecting her transition from Blackguard captain to strategic overseer under the White's guidance. In Chapter 10, Taya returns to the Chromaria after avoiding potential threats at the docks, carefully scanning for peril and any assassins. She navigates through the heavily guarded, rain-lashed Lily's Stem Bridge, observing the blue and yellow Luxon dome protecting it, and reflects on the public grief over the Prism, Gavin Guile, and the recent setbacks for the Chromaria. At Kip's room, she intends to finalize her manumission papers, still wearing the olive oil vial as a safeguard. Inside, she encounters a mysterious man calling himself Master Sharp, also known as Murder, who reveals his lethal skill with peril and immobilizes her temporarily to demonstrate and test her body's responses. He explains the dangers of revealing herself or seeking help, warning that any interference could endanger Commander Iron Fist or Gavin Guile. Sharp offers Taya a single task, promising her manumission papers if completed, then departs, leaving Taya terrified, trapped, and forced to weigh her next actions carefully while feeling the crushing weight of her near slavery. In Chapter 11, Gavin continues his grueling labor as a slave rower on the Bittercob, enduring 10 days of relentless rowing under the foreman's strap's supervision. The Angari slaves are motivated through a combination of discipline, fear, and rewards, including wine for top-performing benches, while the brutal crew members like Leonis are kept in check to prevent them from undermining the slaves' work. Gavin observes the system of beatings, drumming, and tempo setting that maintains the ship's speed, noting the effectiveness and cruelty of the measures. The bitter cob pursues another vessel, closing in while Gavin and the other rowers strain against their oars, following Strap's commands for battle maneuvers. Drummers coordinate the slave rowing during complex maneuvers, including turning to port and adjusting speeds. The ship's actions, combined with musket fire and shouted orders, demonstrate disciplined coordination, but the slaves suffer extreme exhaustion, pain, and fear. The chapter ends with the climactic moment of the ship preparing for an imminent confrontation as the oars are stowed. In Chapter 12, Kip struggles ashore after his escape from the burning rowboat, walking barefoot despite blistered and bleeding feet. Using his green Luxon, he drafts flexible boots to protect his feet and memorizes the design for future use. He calculates distances and potential hazards along the coastline, considering towns, cliffs, and jungles, while rationing his strength and water. Kip drafts a green Luxon water skin to carry water and lights a pyre jelly fire using flint, supplementing his provisions. Reflecting on his magical potential, he compares himself to Gavin Guile, admiring the prism's mastery and ingenuity. He recalls Gavin's sacrifice, realizing the prism saved him during the battle with Andros Guile and Grinwoody, which fills Kip with awe and guilt. Exhausted, he finally prepares to rest, recognizing the warmth from his small Luxon fire, and falls asleep on the beach, dreaming of beasts, gods, and the immense consequences of his experiences. In Chapter 13, Darjan, the ex-priest, prepares for vengeance against the Angari raiders. He climbs a headland with Arya, who warns him that killing is forbidden, but he resolves to act despite her caution. Reflecting on Lucidonius' teachings and the moral conflict between pride, power, and Orlum's will, he summons his Jinia, Aishma, and drafts green and blue Luxon into his armor and weapons, enhancing his mobility, protection, and combat effectiveness. Using Lucidonius' spectacles, he assesses the battlefield and observes the devastation caused by the raiders, men slaughtered, women and children killed or mutilated. Darjan channels his rage and bloodlust into the thorn swords and armored legs, preparing to strike with precision and speed. Haunted by memories of his dead wives and past losses, he embraces his monstrous determination for retribution. Fully armed and empowered by his Jinia, he charges toward the village, resolved to punish the raiders and exact vengeance for the massacred townspeople. In Chapter 14, the bitter cob collides violently with an enemy galley, sending slaves tumbling and causing severe injuries, including a manacle tearing a slave's arm from its socket. The collision fouls the enemy's oars, which snap under stress, while cannon and musket fire create chaos on both ships. Gavin, struggling through smoke and flames, aids his oarmates, Orholum and Fukalat, using their oars to fend off enemy sailors trying to operate cannons. He strikes at attackers, including a cabin boy, following Orholum's guidance. Boarding nets are thrown, and some pirates begin crossing to the bitter cob. Gavin observes a young woman fleeing the enemy galley. She collides with a pirate and disappears into the water. After several minutes of fighting, the action subsides, leaving the bitter cob's exhausted rowers slumped on benches. Gavin notes extensive casualties, including an entire bench of slaves and a significant hole in the ship's side, while Leonis collects the deceased foreman Strap's remains, signaling a change in command. In Chapter 15, Kip survives several days of exhaustion, hunger, and jungle hazards, including navigating rocky cliffs, dense forest, and leech infestations. He uses green Luxon to craft flexible boots and a water-carrying bag, while blue Luxon stabilizes his wounds. After intense physical and magical exertion, Kip experiments with superviolet and yellow Luxon to weave chainmail cloth, refining his drafting skills and expanding his mastery of color. Exhausted, he collapses and experiences feverish visions, including a weeping woman warning him of danger, blending hallucination with reality. Upon waking, Kip finds himself healthy but naked, and he tests his Luxon again to ensure survival. Continuing north along the shore, he discovers a farmhouse where an older woman, Corinne, offers him care, warmth, food, and shelter. Over 2 days, she tends his wounds, feeds him, and helps him regain strength. Corinne provides guidance and encouragement, emphasizing the importance of self-worth, humility, and obedience, while preparing Kip to continue toward the Chromeria safely. In Chapter 16, Gavin Guile meets with Turgal Onesto, a young Elysian banker, at the Crossroads Copy House to secure control over her late husband Gavin's accounts. She carefully dresses to signal her status and authority, balancing mourning and influence while navigating her lingering grief and anxiety. The meeting tests both her tact and knowledge as Turgal initially resists cooperation, claiming Onesto family policy prevents disclosure of account details. Karis quickly demonstrates her preparation and skill by producing the cipher key and properly decoded account information, establishing leverage and commanding respect. She instructs Turgal to transfer the funds to a new account to prevent interference from Andros Guile, while also offering guidance on acquiring strategic Abornian properties for profit and influence. The White's strategy is evident. Karis gains practical authority while learning to manage information and people. The meeting concludes with Karis gaining access to Mashid Roshan, a superviolet drafter and key spy, ensuring future intelligence support and her operational independence. In Chapter 17, Taya resumes Blackguard training with the new inductees, despite having just returned from battle, which frustrates her. Ben-Hadad explains that the rigid routine is meant to restore a sense of normalcy and protect the reputation of those who participated in Ruick Head. During their conversation, Taya learns that Kip is officially considered dead to the Blackguard and cannot return safely, leaving her conflicted over his disappearance and the threat from Andros Guile. Soon after, a young messenger delivers a warning. A man is waiting to meet her in her room. Taya confronts Master Sharp, who outlines her next task, intercepting a spy, Dravis Weir, carrying sensitive papers to the Blood Forest Embassy. She changes into her disciple garb, disguising herself as a boy to blend in, and begins her pursuit through the crowded streets of Big Jasper. Taya manages to intercept the spy in an alley, but the encounter turns violent when Murder Sharp intervenes, killing the spy and leaving a bloody knife in Taya's hand, forcing her to flee before a watchman arrives. In Chapter 18, Gavin hopes for a chance to escape or send word as the Bitter Cob approaches port, but Gunnar maintains tight control over the ship and the enslaved crew. The surviving Elysian sailors are chained to their oars to prevent any interference. Gavin is released from his oar and brought to the poop deck, where Gunnar confronts him, testing his knowledge of prismatic protocol and emphasizing his value. Gunnar discusses a long-standing pursuit by Mungolt Shales, a rival pirate, and explains how he has been letting the threat fester rather than resolving it, highlighting his cunning and cruelty. During their tense exchange, Gunnar toys with Gavin, questioning his prismatic eyes and demonstrating his dominance with the musket sword. The conversation mixes respect, threat, and reflection, as Gunnar laments his lost opportunities for impossible feats while affirming his lethal prowess. Ultimately, he orders Gavin taken below, threatening him further and underscoring the peril he faces. In Chapter 19, Taya escapes the alley after the killing, covered in blood, and navigates through the streets of Big Jasper while evading watchmen. She scrubs herself as best as possible, disposes of the blood-stained stolen clothing, and makes her way back to the Chromeria. Upon arriving, she finds Kip waiting, alive but changed, physically leaner and stronger, heightening her shock. Taya explains her ordeal to him and prepares to meet the consequences of her actions. Marisha intervenes, informing Kip that he must report immediately to the White and the Spectrum. Taya cleans herself thoroughly, carefully removing all evidence of blood, and discovers a letter from Murder Sharp confirming her papers in order. She files the documents at the Chromeria, officially releasing herself from all prior loyalties, gaining wealth and completing the final step to join the Blackguard, though the emotional weight of the events leaves her feeling far from truly free. In Chapter 20, Karis leads a spy through the streets of Big Jasper, feeling vulnerable without her Blackguard garb and relying on her wits to navigate the city. She ambushes the man Dayan Dakan, incapacitating him with a precise strike after learning he was sent only to delay her. Returning to the Chromeria, she prepares for the Spectrum meeting, cleaning herself and managing her appearance while noting the tension in the room. Inside the chamber, Karis observes discussions of war, the use of sea chariots, and Andros Guile's commands regarding the color prints, while remaining focused on her husband, Gavin. The suspense is broken when Kip interrupts, revealing that Gavin is alive and has been captured by the pirate Gunnar. Karis experiences overwhelming relief and tears, witnessing the Spectrum and Andros Guile solemnly acknowledge the news and pray to Oralum for guidance, as the balance of power and hope shifts dramatically with the revelation. In Chapter 21, Taya enters the Prism's training room under the tower, observing Commander Iron Fist executing an advanced obstacle course while wielding two swords. His skill and speed impress her, highlighting the difficulty of combining movement and weapon use. Iron Fist notices Taya and addresses her calmly, discussing her freedom after turning in her coin sticks and explaining that blackguards who have grown up as slaves may struggle with immediate liberty. Taya confesses she is being blackmailed for theft, detailing how she had stolen items for Lady Aglaya Krassos and that the stolen items were recognizable, making her vulnerable. Iron Fist questions her abilities and confirms she works for Aglaya as well. He instructs her to document all the stolen items in writing, promising to manage the situation if the list is complete. Taya realizes that revealing this to the White could expose her further, creating tension and fear, but she agrees to follow Iron Fist's plan. In Chapter 22, Gavin endures the grueling routine of life as a slave aboard Gunner's galley. His days are dominated by endless rowing, brutal discipline under the overseer Leonis, and repetitive physical labor, with little variation beyond brief stops at ports for supplies or hunting. Despite the harsh treatment, Gavin observes the competence and resilience of the other slaves, noting their adaptability and strict adherence to the crew's rhythm. Occasionally, the crew is rewarded with alcohol, providing fleeting relief. During one night on deck, Gavin talks with Orlum, a prophet enslaved alongside him, who recounts his tragic past, his years of captivity, and the ways Orlum guided him. Orlum explains that Gavin must confront and voice his frustrations and blasphemies to release the poison of his experience. The chapter closes with the storm approaching, Gunner preparing the ship to ride it, and Gavin being hustled below decks as the pirates brace for danger, highlighting the relentless tension of his captivity. In Chapter 23, Taya meets Commander Iron Fist and the White in a carefully orchestrated audience. Iron Fist guides her through the blackguard checkpoint, ensuring their movements remain secret from potentially untrustworthy blackguards. He reveals he knows about her thefts and blackmail situation, having acted to protect her, and Taya admits to the White the full scope of her past actions, including her interactions with Lady Aglaya Krassos and Master Sharp, the murder she witnessed, and the retrieval of her manumission papers. The White listens closely, asking about her family, and Taya reluctantly recounts her past, including her mother's reckless behavior, her father's limited protection, and the status of her sisters. The White confirms her support, providing Taya with resources and recognition of her freedom. Iron Fist and the White discuss the implications of her bravery and cunning, emphasizing the broader stakes of loyalty, intelligence, and the potential to use her skills against enemies of the Chromeria. In Chapter 24, Gavin relives his first Sunday as Prism, a ceremonial and harrowing ritual in which he must shrive and execute hundreds of drafters. Under the careful guidance of his mother, Gavin Guile, he is anointed with oils and a mixture of yellow and superviolet luxin to preserve his body and enhance the visual impact of his execution. Gavin moves methodically through rooms, meeting drafters of various colors, each confessing sins ranging from cruelty, envy, and lust, to white ambitions, murder, and sabotage. Despite the horrors, he maintains composure, listening and responding to each, providing absolution where possible, and executing them swiftly with precise luxin manipulation. Some drafters resist, are bound, or require additional intervention, but Gavin persists without pause. The chapter culminates with his emotional breaking upon a young drafter, Dulcina, who shows him genuine openness and trust. After completing the ritual, Gavin ends the ordeal by drafting Black Luxin, symbolizing both exhaustion and the collapse of his faith in Orlum. In Chapter 25, Kip struggles with the aftermath of confronting Andros Guile, feeling overwhelmed by guilt, uncertainty, and the pressure of his role. He avoids the crowds in the Blackguard's training yard and instead enters the Prism's private training room using Superviolet to bypass the locks. He begins rigorous training, wrapping his hands and experimenting with green Luxin to augment his punches, learning to integrate magic with physical movement. Kip tests himself on the heavy bag and stretch bag, gradually improving his control, precision, and force. During his exercises, he is unexpectedly joined by his fellow Blackguard trainees, including Cruxer and others, who observe and tease him, reassuring Kip that he is not seen as a traitor. He demonstrates a technique using Luxin to enhance speed and power, impressing the group and sparking discussion about its applications. Kip gains confidence in both his magical and physical abilities while reconnecting with his peers. In Chapter 26, Oliviana Danavis concludes her instruction of 4 superviolet drafters atop the Great Pyramid of Ru, preparing them to replace her. Her personal guard, led by the imposing Phyros and including Tychos, a skilled hexcaster, accompanies her. Liv demonstrates how to manipulate the pyramid's great mirror to project light across the city, empowering drafters below, but notices the city remains hostile despite its liberation, with fires and disease spreading from ongoing unrest. She reflects on the Color Prince's control, including a black Luxon jewel she carries as a safeguard, though she doubts its efficacy. Liv and her guard prepare to travel by galley to pursue a mission, locating a seed crystal or superviolet bane identified by the Color Prince. The journey is dangerous, but her skills, calculations, and the mirror's capabilities give her leverage. Samila Saye, a legendary blue drafter, assists Liv with precise mirror alignments, but leaves without acknowledgement, intensifying Liv's frustration. Liv begins her descent ready to act. In Chapter 27, Liv arrives at the docks with her entourage and is approached by a young woman from the Order of the Broken Eye, who kneels and assures Liv she poses no threat. Liv's guard, led by Phyros, carefully searches the woman and escorts her into the galley. The visitor warns Liv that the necklace given to her by the Color Prince contains a piece of living black Luxon, a dangerous substance capable of compelling obedience and potentially killing her if mishandled. The woman explains that black Luxon is not ordinary stone, but a remnant of an ancient war, possessing will and possibly intellect, and cautions Liv against placing it at the center of her power when claiming the Bane. She emphasizes that the Order is not Liv's enemy and urges caution, warning that misuse could destroy not only Liv, but the magic in the world. The ship is preparing to cast off, leaving Liv to consider the immense risk. In Chapter 28, Kip waits for Taya, realizing she has taken her ownership papers and is no longer his slave, freeing her from their former bond. He attends class with Magister Kada, who confronts him and Ben-Hadad about their behavior, but Kip asserts his authority and diffuses the situation, preventing Ben-Hadad's expulsion. Later, Kip seeks an audience with the White, passing strict security, and explains his concerns regarding Magister Kada's block transfers, requesting her assistance. He also asks for guidance in learning about the Lightbringer and the Blinder's Knife, emphasizing his need for a tutor to master his full-spectrum polychrome abilities. The White provides Kip with a framed Nine Kings card, the Unbreakable, from Janus Borig, highlighting its importance and warning him to safeguard it. She acknowledges Kip's potential, agrees to arrange tutoring with Lady Guile, Karis, and cautions him to ensure any dangerous actions he takes are truly meant to serve Orhalam. In Chapter 29, after 3 days of storm, Gunnar anchors the Bitter Cob near a small island. The pirates feed the slaves and maintain order while waiting for clear skies. Gavin sleeps heavily but dreams vividly, aware that he is dreaming. In his vision, he is a child witnessing a horror. 11-year-old Dazin discovers Sebastian's room under attack. He struggles to reach his brother but cannot interact with the environment. His hands pass through doors and objects. He watches helplessly as a blue-white kills Sebastian with a single, precise strike. Overcome with grief, Dazin attempts to revive his brother, smearing his blood on Sebastian's body and screaming in anguish. Gavin awakens abruptly from the nightmare, still shaken by the vivid, traumatic vision, as Orhalam rocks him awake. The intensity of the dream leaves Gavin frustrated and horrified, prompting him to lash out verbally at Orhalam for sending such tormenting visions. In Chapter 30, the Bitter Cob, a slow Elysian galley, races against another ship with Gavin and the other slaves rowing under harsh conditions. The Elysians are brutal slave masters, and Leonis drives them with threats and the lash. Gavin struggles with exhaustion, physical pain, and the realization that without his drafting, his identity and power as Prism are gone. Despite the chaos, the rowing continues with precise discipline, punctuated by cannon fire, smoke, and destruction as the two ships collide. Amid the carnage, a young man drops from the enemy ship, Antonius Malargos, a Malargos family member and former Brief Green, offering to free the slaves if they help cut the boarding nets. Gavin watches as Antonius begins freeing the slaves and immediately recognizes the boy as innocent and unbound by family hatred. A violent attack by Leonis sends Gavin and others into chaos, but Antonius survives, revealing protective armor, and Orhalam appears with the manacle key, signaling their imminent liberation. In Chapter 31, Eris Greenvale, heavily pregnant with her 13th child, prepares for childbirth while managing her responsibilities as a subred and satrap of Blood Forest. She reviews correspondence regarding the impending invasion by the Color Prince, assessing threats and allies, including her sister Ela's insistence on avenging her daughter Anna, who had died after trying to seduce Gavin Guile. Eris confirms Gavin's innocence but remains wary of him. Amidst preparations, she engages with her lover Elijah, who reveals himself as Murder Sharp of the Order of the Broken Eye. He coerces her cooperation. She must vote for Andros Guile as Promachos and maintain silence, or her family will be killed. He demonstrates control over her body and presence, yet spares her and the baby. Eris resolves to endure the contractions, prepare for labor, and assert her autonomy, understanding that her final fight is not against another, but to bring her child safely into the world while protecting her family and her circle. In Chapter 32, Karis observes the Spectrum meeting and realizes the subtle dangers of political maneuvering, noting that Andros Guile has changed significantly since the Battle of Rue. She suspects he is a red-white who has been hiding his power and presence, and begins to consider how she might expose him while preparing to defend herself. The Spectrum is called to witness and vote on Andros' nomination as Promachos. The White announces that Aris Greenvale has died in childbirth, leaving her newborn son, Ben-Oni. Andros recounts his personal struggle, confessing his reliance on prayer and Orhalum, and demonstrates his rejuvenated strength and presence, removing gloves and spectacles to reveal renewed physical and magical vitality. He calls for the Spectrum's approval to confront the Color Prince, seeking election as Promachos. Klytos Blue nominates him, Gia Tolver votes aye, Delara Orange votes no, and the White confirms the election. The chapter ends with Kalia Green arriving just minutes late, highlighting how small timing shifts can alter history. In Chapter 33, Kip returns to the library on Little Jasper, finding it unchanged since he left. He seeks access to the upstairs and restricted sections to find the genealogies and heretical black cards, encountering a dismissive librarian who initially refuses him entry. Kip considers intimidating the man with his blackguard status, but instead apologizes, impressing the librarian and gaining access. He encounters Commander Iron Fist, who is engrossed in work and refuses to answer questions, reminding Kip of the perils of overstepping. Kip meets Quentin Nahid, a young Luxiet, and convinces him to help navigate the restricted library, providing Kip with a signed red parchment granting access. While conversing with Quentin, Kip realizes the limitations of the Luxiet's knowledge regarding modern genealogies and heretical materials, noting that much of what he seeks is deliberately restricted to preserve secrets. He reflects on his growing power, privileges, and the changes in himself since his earlier days as a blackguard. In Chapter 34, Kip attempts to attend a lecture with Magister Tawenza Goldeneyes, but the No Men Allowed sign blocks him. Despite the Magister's hostility, Kip asserts himself as a superchromat and slips inside, allowing a female student through. Later, he proceeds to the restricted library, but the librarian informs him that new rules require his grandfather's personal permission for access, thwarting his plan. Kip attends an engineering lecture on mirror armor and blue Luxon, realizing most classes are trivial compared to war preparations. At lunch, he finds Aris alone after several blackguard inductees have left or been reassigned. Kip joins him briefly, but their interaction is tense. Unable to remain idle, Kip goes to the training room, where he tests his strength and technique on the pull-up bar and punching bag, reflecting on his progress. Taya finds him, apologizes for her absence on deck, and confirms her loyalty, deepening their renewed friendship and trust as they prepare for blackguard practice. In Chapter 35, Gavin and the freed slaves work to cut the boarding nets connecting the Bittercob to the enemy ship, prioritizing separation to prevent reinforcements. Gavin coordinates the slaves, grabs a wood plank to reach the damaged stairs, and ascends with Antonius Malargos and others. The hatch is locked, but a hidden latch is discovered, allowing them to reach the deck. Gavin leads attacks against pirate defenders using a club and knife to kill several and clear a path. They systematically cut the grapnels, securing the nets, scattering pirates, and opening a gap. As the slaves begin rowing, Gavin faces Gunner, who has his musket trained on him, but sees that Gunner's ship is now trapped, out of oars and ammunition. Gunner lowers his weapon and, with Gavin's assistance, climbs back onto the Bittercob, securing their escape and preserving the lives of the slaves. In Chapter 36, Kip is led by Grinwoody to Andros Guile's expanded apartments, now incorporating his late wife Phelia's rooms. Kip observes 8 influential drafters waiting, including Tissus Malargos, and notes the tense, politically charged atmosphere. Andros, looking younger and more formidable than Kip remembered, greets him and immediately begins a discussion framed through a game of 9 kings. During the game, Andros tests Kip's judgment, insight, and composure, drawing lessons from Kip's choices and revealing strategic perspectives on the Crimeria's vulnerabilities. Kip uses the opportunity to request access to all the Crimeria libraries and gains Andros' conditional consent. He also shares intelligence about his father's capture by Xymon, prompting Andros to outline plans for recovering him. Andros warns Kip about the stakes of becoming the next Prism elect, emphasizing that the mission to retrieve the stolen and new 9 Kings cards is a critical task that will determine Kip's suitability and future role. In Chapter 37, Kip goes to the highest restricted library with his squad, using Promachos Guile's writ to bypass the librarian. The library is luxurious, staffed by mute and illiterate slaves and filled with rare texts. Kip browses scrolls in languages and scripts unfamiliar to him, including accounts of Tyria's history and farming methods. He notices 4 young Luxiets carrying stacks of books and questions the librarian, learning that the texts haven't been recently repaired and may have been moved from other restricted libraries. Kip orders the Luxiets to fetch Quentin Nahid, a highly favored and honest Luxiet, to assist him. Quentin confirms that different permissions govern each restricted library, and that Promachos Guile had opened the forbidden libraries for defensive study, but many books remained inaccessible due to lingering magisterial restrictions. Kip realizes the Luxiats are acting in technically obedient yet obstructive ways, highlighting the tension between authority, secrecy, and knowledge in the Crimeria. In Chapter 38, Taya navigates the dark, foggy streets of Big Jasper, aware the Order could find her at any moment. She steels herself and drafts peril to illuminate the path. Murder Sharp, a masked Order operative, meets her and leads her into a smithy where a dozen cloaked and veiled figures await, some wearing weasel bear masks and dark spectacles. The group gathers around a table displaying items Taya had previously stolen for Aglaia Krassos. A gruff leader delivers a sermon detailing the origins of the Order, tracing its formation to survivors of the Braxian civilization, the creation of the first Shimmercloaks, and their mission to maintain balance and justice. They recount the betrayal of Diacoptis, later known as Lucidonius, and the founding of the Order to oppose him. Taya learns that the Order seeks capable individuals, not slaves, and is offering her a chance to join as a shadow. The silver items she had stolen are melted down in a ceremonial fire, symbolizing renewal and commitment. In Chapter 39, Gavin Guile and Antonius Malargos prepare the crew of the Bitter Cobb for their next decisions at sea. Gavin reflects on past injuries and the effects of obsidian weapons, noting that prior magical attacks on him left no lasting marks. He considers his losses and the toll of war, including the emptiness of his promises to Karis. Gavin tests the mystical effects of a blackened sword while training Antonius in its use. As the crew assembles at dawn, they discuss potential destinations: Big Jasper, Wrath, or continued piracy. Antonius offers the sailors freedom, papers from his cousin Lady Irene, and a share of cargo for following him, but Gavin asserts his authority, choosing Big Jasper. He acknowledges the threat posed by Andros Guile, now Promachos, who has consolidated power and would likely seize Gavin if he returned. The crew recognizes Gavin's fear and trusts Antonius' counsel, solidifying their plan to avoid Big Jasper despite Gavin's position as Prism. In Chapter 40, Kip and his squad continue their work in the restricted library, seeking knowledge to aid in the coming war. Despite having access, Kip struggles to find exactly what he needs, navigating books on forbidden histories, pagan rituals, and the Magisterium's darkest practices. The squad wrestles with the horrors they uncover, including accounts of human sacrifice and abuses of power which shock and disturb them. Quentin Nahid proves invaluable, clarifying that many Luxiats have secretly defied the Promachos and explaining the distribution of forbidden texts across different libraries. The group debates the risks of studying these materials, recognizing that using such knowledge could provoke the enemy and escalate the conflict, yet agree it is necessary for defense. Through the discussion, the squad solidifies their trust in Kip's leadership and their willingness to act as a coordinated unit. Cruxer emphasizes the importance of unity, with Ben-Hadad affirming his loyalty to the squad above personal doubts. In Chapter 41, Kip explores the workshops beneath the Blue Tower, witnessing advanced Luxon research and production, where drafters and craftsmen apply calculations to practical work. He meets Karis's new tutor, Mistress Phoebe Caligania, a yellow superchromat who critiques Gavin Guile's drafting style and agrees to train Kip intensively, promising he will master rapid yellow Luxon creation within weeks. Kip reflects on his past hardships and recognizes the opportunities his talents now afford him. Meanwhile, Andros Guile provides updates on the war, revealing ongoing losses at Ruick Neck and Sitara's Wells, and emphasizing the importance of oaths, honesty, and responsibility. Training with Karis and the Blackguards continues, including specials, which are practical, high-risk assignments to teach creativity, stealth, and combat. Kip's squad solidifies with Cruxer, Taya, Big Leo, Furcuti, Ben-Hadad, Delos, and Gross Goss, joined by the new recruit Winson. The Blackguards are tasked with coordinated operations in the city, ranging from theft, surveillance, and enforcement, preparing them for strategic missions. In Chapter 42, Gavin prepares to disembark the Bitter Cob at Wrath Harbor, facing the dangers of sharks, crocodiles, and polluted waters while navigating the shrinking options for escape. He reflects on his vulnerability and the risks of moving without drafting or coin, aware that Malargo's forces could apprehend him. Orholm confronts Gavin about his prior encounters with Black and White Luxon, accusing him of cowardice and refusing to acknowledge the truth of his experiences. Gavin asserts his own perspective, challenging the prophet's framing, and maintains his resolve despite Orholm's warnings of spiritual and moral consequences. Meanwhile, Gavin evaluates his precarious position in the harbor, aware of political and familial tensions, particularly with Irene Malargos and his past enemies. He prepares a musket, entrusting it to Foucault for safekeeping. Ultimately, ignoring Orholm's disapproval and the risks from natural and human threats, Gavin takes decisive action, diving into the harbor to begin his dangerous escape. In Chapter 43, Gavin swims through the dangerous delta near Wrath Harbor, navigating the mix of fresh water and salt water that attracts both sharks and crocodiles. Stripped of clothing for speed, he aims for a river galley while avoiding predators. Exhausted, he narrowly escapes being crushed or attacked by the galley, using a combination of diving, currents, and careful timing. Gavin becomes entangled in a net holding a harpooned tiger shark, acting as bait for other predators, while a sailor on deck tries to manage the sharks with a harpoon. As the river transitions into fresh water, the sharks begin to retreat, giving him a chance to maneuver toward the shore or the Great Bridge for cover. Just as he nears safety, a Ruthgari war galley appears, flying the Malargo sigil while a river dolphin approaches him. The dolphin attacks him repeatedly, striking his ribs and head, and Gavin loses consciousness, leaving his fate in peril. In Chapter 44, Kip's squad prepares to intercept a heretic preacher, Lord Arius, who is distributing sealed scrolls as part of spy operations in Varash. The team debates the morality and risk of the assignment, weighing following orders versus potential consequences. Kip and Cruxer climb scaffolding to gain a vantage point over the intersection, while other squad members take positions for observation. Cruxer explains to Kip that he will never be allowed to take final Blackguard vows due to the time constraints imposed by the Whites' limited lifespan and political factors, emphasizing that Kip must focus on what he can accomplish now. Big Leo confronts the preacher, assaulting him methodically to subdue him without lethal harm. Taya uses peril to assist, ensuring Leo remains safe. Meanwhile, Kip and Cruxer observe a woman tending to the downed spy, identifying her as the handler. With the mission complete, they decide to head directly to the safe house to confirm the team's success. In Chapter 45, Taya realizes she is being followed after splitting from Big Leo while the squad conducts surveillance in Varash. She detects a small man tailing her and moves carefully through the neighborhoods toward a prearranged ambush point. Goss and Winson are positioned to incapacitate her pursuer, with Furcuti and Delos covering other angles. When the man attacks her, Taya uses her skill and reflexes to twist the blade into him, fatally wounding him. Furcuti intervenes to restrain the man further, and Goss and Winson assist in cleaning up and covering the scene. Taya wipes the blood from herself using Furcuti's tunic and disposes of the body's clothing and the petasos. She directs the squad to hide evidence of the struggle and clean the area. The squad then departs in staggered, coordinated fashion, leaving no trace of the incident and ensuring they are not seen, successfully completing their covert operation. In Chapter 46, Gavin wakes bound and gagged in a wagon, bruised and in pain from his recent escape. Despite his injuries, he notes the beauty and engineering of the Great River Delta while reflecting on his predicament. He considers the logistics of flood season, the historical significance of the Blood Plains, and the strategic power of river navigation. Irene Malargos enters, observing him critically and questioning his plans, demonstrating awareness of his escape and the signals from Antonius Malargos. She evaluates his actions, the galley's crew, and his prior attempts at survival, asserting dominance and control over the situation. Gavin tests her reactions with charm and strategic words, gauging her intent and power. Irene stresses that she knows his weaknesses, monitors his maneuvers, and could silence his allies if necessary. The chapter ends with a tense standoff where Gavin asserts his identity and threats of reprisal to the observing servants, signaling the beginning of a high-stakes negotiation with Irene. In Chapter 47, Taya struggles with guilt after killing a man during their mission, feeling the weight of taking a life despite the squad's tactical success. The squad gathers in a concealed safe house, a converted chicken coop with bunk beds, supplies, and weapons. Kip consoles Taya, asserting that as warriors, their actions are part of their duty, and he physically demonstrates his strength and support by lifting Furcuti to give her the towel. The squad discusses the moral complexities of their roles and the nature of the Chromeria, acknowledging the potential for corruption and broken oaths even among its leaders. Kip emphasizes that, despite flaws and abuses, their actions as blackguards are the best possible under the circumstances. Taya gains perspective, understanding her actions were necessary in the context of war. Cruxer then promotes Taya to first sergeant, establishing her as second in command and reaffirming the squad's hierarchy and cohesion as they prepare to return to the Chromeria. In Chapter 48, Kip's squad assembles under Trainer Fisk as blackguards observe the formation of the Light Guard, Andros Guile's personal mercenary force trained by blackguards and given privileges and weapons normally reserved for them. Specials, missions beyond standard training, dominate the blackguards' duties, with some members sent on secret assignments, including searches for Gavin and potential nexuses of the 7 Luxon colors. Reports circulate of unusual phenomena, a sand dragon incorporating red Luxon, green Luxon fertilizing fields, orange Luxon appearing in wells, and anomalous weather events. These occurrences highlight the instability and strange power dynamics in the world. The squad is ordered to East Bay docks to witness the reading of the lists detailing the dead and missing from recent battles, including blackguards like Alessia, Laya, Tugertent, Ahanan, Jur, Norald Yumber, and Panharl. The sheer scale of loss overwhelms observers, emphasizing the cost of war and the need for their squad to excel in order to survive and honor their duty. In Chapter 49, Taya follows Murder Sharp to a secluded house in Weasel Rock for a light-splitting test. Initially defiant, she resists instructions to strip, recognizing the attempt at humiliation. She eventually complies, wearing a hooded mask that obscures her vision, and prepares to focus on sensing colors through her skin rather than using her eyes. The test involves identifying colors called by a chime without visual cues. Taya guesses several correctly at first, then begins to sense the colors physically, experiencing warmth and cold corresponding to each Luxon. Through the test, she confirms her ability to perceive colors parally, including sub-red and other spectral Luxon. By the end, she passes perfectly, realizing that she is not only a drafter, but a light splitter. The chapter emphasizes her mastery over her senses, her resilience under stress, and her growing recognition of her own extraordinary abilities. In Chapter 50, Karis is practicing espionage from a library, honing her observational skills and managing sensitive magical tools, including a voice-altering spiked choker. She reflects on her personal losses and the possibility that Kip may be dead, but she suppresses emotion to focus on her work. Karis then meets with her newest operative, Taya, who has been undercover and tested as a light splitter. Taya reports on her recent assignments, including her harrowing light-splitting test, where she nearly had to strip naked and rely on her skin to sense Luxon colors. Karis assesses the girl's abilities while maintaining secrecy, guiding Taya without revealing her own identity. She deduces the identity of Taya's previous handler as Commander Ironfist and contemplates the dangers Taya faces if discovered. Karis explains that the Order will likely assign Taya to steal a shimmer cloak, emphasizing the deadly stakes and the need for deception, training, and survival. In Chapter 51, Kip and the Blackguard inductees witness an extraordinary training session between Commander Iron Fist and his brother Tremble Fist. Both men wield bamboo swords in intricate, fluid combat, demonstrating unparalleled skill, speed, and adaptability. Tremble Fist, typically overlooked, manages to outmaneuver Iron Fist at points, shocking the observing squads. Iron Fist assigns unusual secondary weapons to selected trainees, testing their ability to adapt, while the match subtly teaches lessons in preparation, creativity, and reading opponents. Kip and the squad realize that Tremblefist's careful setups, like having Taya choose certain weapons, are deliberate exercises in strategic thinking. The training emphasizes that being the best carries responsibility, discipline, and constant self-improvement, while mistakes by the worst squads serve as a contrast to push the elite further. After the session, Iron Fist privately reveals the depth of Tremblefist's sacrifice and care for him, leading to Tremblefist stepping out of the shadows and taking an active role in training Squad Aleph. In Chapter 52, Karis confronts Marisha in her private chambers, facing both the weight of the spycraft world and her own uncertainties. Karis realizes that by entrusting Taya to her care, Marisha has deliberately exposed herself, testing Karis's judgment and courage. As they speak, Karis reflects on the precariousness of social position, her family's past decisions, and the cost of survival and loyalty. The conversation navigates the delicate balance of power, control, and respect between handler and operative, mirrored in their shared sips of rare whiskey. The storm outside underscores the intensity and unpredictability of their world. Despite the tension, a mutual recognition emerges. Both women have fought battles, one open, one secret, and understand the pressures of command and discretion. By the end, Karis acknowledges a rare moment of trust and connection with Marisha, calling their shared drink the best thing I've done in months, marking a tentative alliance between them. In Chapter 53, Samila Saye observes a grand ceremony orchestrated by the Color Prince, now declaring himself the White King, to consolidate power and unite the satrapies. The event commemorates the victory at Ox Ford, while also mourning losses, though Samila focuses on the augmentation of her left hand with blue Luxon, reflecting on the dangers and self-inflicted pain Luxon can cause. She evaluates the crowd, the Color Prince's manipulation, and the risks inherent in godhood. The Color Prince elevates Ramia Corfu to a position of power, giving him a crystal that temporarily manifests blue Luxon armor. However, the so-called black Luxon pendant around Ramia's neck lethally decapitates him as a demonstration of the White King's control and the consequences of disloyalty. Samila is then offered the role of Mot, the Blue Goddess, signifying her recognition and promotion within the Color Prince's hierarchy. She accepts, mentally invoking Mina as a guiding presence, aware of the gravity and danger of her new position. In Chapter 54, Karis meets privately with the White to clarify her new role overseeing the Chromaria's spies. The White confirms she has already had Marisha handle internal spy operations for years, and that Karis' assignment is primarily for external or unclear threats. Karis questions why she was brought in, fearing redundancy, but the White explains that it was to ensure Karis had purpose and to handle a sensitive case where the internal-external distinction is uncertain. Their discussion reveals the White's sharp observation skills, noting Karis' visit to Marisha by scent and subtle cues, highlighting her vigilance and the necessity of cunning in spycraft. The conversation balances mentorship, humor, and strategic reasoning, demonstrating the White's trust in Karis' judgment while confirming that not every action carries a grand design. Ultimately, Karis is dismissed to continue her work, reassured but still reflecting on the intricacies of espionage and command. In Chapter 55, Kip awakens from recurring nightmares about his father Gavin and the war, plagued by visions of violence and guilt. Seeking clarity, he visits Quentin in the Blue Tower, navigating the Luxiets barracks to discuss the selection and consecration of prisms. Quentin explains that prisms are discovered through reports from Luxiets and the hierarchy of the Magisterium, with the High Luxiets overseeing the final testing. Kip deduces the existence of the Blinding Knife, a key artifact for creating new prisms, which had been stolen 17 years ago by his mother, preventing Gavin from being replaced. The knife's loss explains anomalies in prism succession and the extended tenure of Gavin as prism. Kip realizes that Andros Guile's obsession with the blade was strategic, securing the future of the satrapies. With Quentin's help, he begins planning to locate the blinding knife before the Color Prince can use it, prioritizing it above genealogies or records. In Chapter 56, Irene Malargos confronts Gavin Guile about past events, tracing her estrangement from Felia Guile to the survival of Dervani Malargos after the war. Gavin explains that he deliberately misled Felia, claiming Dervani had been an imposter, to protect Irene and the satrapies. He recounts how Dervani had acted heroically during the war, but ultimately perished due to battlefield circumstances, while Gavin's actions ensured the safety of others. Irene details the immense logistical and financial burdens her family endured post-war, highlighting how Gavin's interventions, stopping the war, defeating pirates, and preserving estates, saved countless lives and resources, creating a debt of gratitude. Gavin frames these events as a balance of blood and responsibility, emphasizing the deliberate selection of those who survived the lottery at Oxford to ensure peace. Their conversation underscores strategy, sacrifice, and the weight of leadership, culminating in Gavin demanding Irene free him so he can continue his fight against the Color Prince. In Chapter 57, Quentin excitedly reveals to Kip that he has discovered a pattern linking the Lightbringer prophecies and the Black Cards, though much of the information is deliberately erased. Quentin has cross-referenced old Luxiat prayer books and translations, noting blank spaces where sections were removed, likely centuries ago, possibly by Luxors during heresy crackdowns. Kip uses his superviolet Luxon and colored spectacles to examine the pages, but finds no hidden writing. The surviving fragments hint at the Lightbringer's identity and actions, with cryptic lines referencing Jinn, the Promethean's brood, and Lucidonius suggesting a connection between the Lightgiver and Lightbringer. Quentin points out that some translations misrendered key phrases, revealing that the Lightbringer may already have appeared as Lucidonius. Despite the intriguing discoveries, most of the prophecies remain fragmented and deliberately obscured, leaving Kip and Quentin with tantalizing but incomplete information and a clear sense that whoever erased the text intended to keep the truth hidden. In Chapter 58, Kip and Karis continue their intensive martial training, deepening their bond and understanding. Kip works on the heavy bag while Karis, dressed in blackguard-style red garb, teaches him the Sharana-ru, a flexible, dual-bladed weapon made from sea demon bone that responds to the wielder's will. She instructs him on controlling its flexibility and timing, demonstrating rapid attacks and counters, emphasizing the necessity of balance between strength, skill, and the blood-infused willpower required to wield such weapons. Karis explains the importance of acknowledging one's inner self alongside the warrior persona, teaching Kip that embracing personal frailty strengthens both combat and command. Their practice is fast, brutal, and full contact, leaving Kip bruised but steadily improving. Karis also shares historical context about legendary warrior castes and lost martial traditions. The session closes with Karis affirming Kip's growth, declaring that he is becoming a real warrior and expressing pride in his development, cementing both mentorship and trust. In Chapter 59, Gavin is confronted by the Nukaba in her library, where she reveals her plans to defect or align with the Color Prince, citing the corruption and insularity of the Spectrum and the weakened state of the Empire. She demonstrates the power of a seed crystal, an artifact capable of detecting lies, which confirms Gavin's duplicity and keeps him on edge. They discuss her past, including her forced marriage to Iziludad, the aftermath of her family's near destruction, and her rise to the position of Nukaba. She confronts Gavin about his role in her suffering and the loss of her brothers to the Blackguards, accusing him of prioritizing others over her family. During the tense encounter, she threatens him with a matchlock pistol, using it to test his reactions. Gavin tries to seize control, losing 2 fingers in the attempt. The struggle ends with a discharge, minor injuries, and ultimately, the Nukaba collapsing from a cut artery, leaving Gavin and the guards in shock. In Chapter 60, Quentin Nahid, a High Luxiat, is tasked by Brother Talib with a morally and politically fraught mission. He receives a message that signals a death sentence for a young man, which Quentin struggles to reconcile with his conscience and the principles of mercy and justice. Brother Talib emphasizes that while all are equal under Orholam's light, some truths require secrecy and decisive action to preserve the magisterium's authority. Quentin recognizes the danger of questioning or refusing this order, as the High Luxiats have total control over him and could erase him from history. The discussion reveals that the High Magisterium has tolerated the loss of a powerful relic for 16 years to avoid conflict with Gavin Guile and Andros Guile, but the emergence of Kip Guile as a legitimate heir now threatens their power. Quentin is commanded not to merely deliver a message, but to execute a killing, highlighting the lethal intersection of religious duty, politics, and personal morality within the Magisterium. In Chapter 61, Kip returns from training to find his room thoroughly trashed: broken furniture, a slashed mattress and pillow, stolen coin purse, and a note from Andros Guile demanding his immediate presence. Unfazed by the destruction, Kip uses the incident to assess Andros' character, recognizing it as a display of intimidation and control. He directs a slave to report the crime and clean up, asserting authority despite the disruption. Entering Andros' quarters, Kip finds his grandfather in bed with Thesis Malargos, leading to an awkward and confrontational encounter. Kip verbally spars with both, testing Andros' patience while avoiding physical retaliation. Andros demonstrates his psychological dominance, revealing the intricate power dynamics of the Guile family and his capacity for manipulation. Eventually, Andros summons Kip to discuss the Black Cards, offering him mentorship and a chance to inherit their secrets, but under strict conditions. Kip realizes he is being drawn into a game of strategy where predictability and charisma dictate survival. In Chapter 62, the perspective follows a young woman assassin wielding a jagged obsidian and ivory blade. She attacks a drafter, stabbing her in the side and throat. The drafter's eyes bleach white, losing the crimson glow of life, yet she dies without the usual scarring of deceased drafters, indicating unnatural intervention. The assassin drags the body into an alcove, concealing it before handing the blade, a living gem that shifts from diamond to ruby, to an old woman. The woman meticulously prepares a workbench, securing the ruby into a device connected to chains and a choker. Using sunlight, lenses, and Luxin-infused red ink, she imbues the chains and cloak with the gem's power, draining its color like the murdered drafter's lifeblood. Once complete, she snaps the choker over the chains, creating a fully functional shimmer cloak. She notes that to finalize its abilities, the wearer will require a prism's life and will completing the transformation. In Chapter 63, Taya walks through the evening crowds to clear her head after Blackguard practice, noting Kip's frequent absences and his improving skills through private training with Karis Guile and guidance from Trumblefist's squad. As she navigates the market, she discovers a flash paper note that cannot be touched or tampered with. Carefully opening it, she reads that Kip is slated for assassination during a raid that day, likely by one or more Blackguards at the docks before noon. Alarmed, she immediately runs toward the squad's safe house. Upon arrival, she finds Cruxer alone preparing his pistol. She urgently explains the threat to Kip, insisting they must act immediately to save him, and Cruxer responds in shock but mobilizes at her command. The chapter ends with Taya and Cruxer rushing to intervene before the planned attack on Kip. In Chapter 64, Kip is buried under books when two blackguards, Buskin and Lytus, arrive at his door. They inform him that Watch Captain Fisk has assigned him to assist in a search operation among the Nunks, part of the ongoing efforts to locate the Bane and the Prism. Although Kip had been promised opportunities by the Primachos, this mission is separate and unexpected. The Blackguards clarify that the operation will conclude before dark to avoid disrupting regular training. Despite the jibes about his comfortable quarters, Kip accepts the assignment, realizing it's his first chance to participate directly in the search for his father. He senses tension from Buskin and Lytus, unusual hostility he hasn't encountered before, making him cautious but resolute. Kip gathers his belongings and prepares to depart, determined to take the mission seriously while navigating the complex dynamics of the Blackguard and his own personal stakes. In Chapter 65, Taya and Cruxer intercept Winston while tracking Kip, learning that he has gone to meet Lytos and Buskin in Little Hill, a Tyrian slum where he is at risk of assassination. They move cautiously through the crowded, rainy streets to follow without being noticed. As Taya closes in, Buskin attacks with a blade, but she intervenes with a massive peril wave, stunning him. The group navigates the market chaos as Buskin attempts to flee, creating hazards with falling barrels and flames. Kip follows closely, drafting Luxin to aid Winston's maneuver over rooftops. Finally, Winsen looses an arrow from a long distance through the storm, striking Buskin in the chest and killing him instantly. The team reaches Buskin's body amidst the frightened and fleeing market-goers. Taya and the others process the violence differently, with Winsen displaying clinical detachment while Taya remains shaken, but the threat to Kip is neutralized. In Chapter 66, Kip reports to Karis instead of Commander Iron Fist about the betrayal and deaths of 2 blackguards. He gives a full account and reveals that Lytus may have hesitated at the last moment, possibly turning against the true traitor before being killed. Lytus also mentioned a Luxiat before dying, suggesting deeper conspiracy. Kip asks whether withholding this from his team is betrayal, and Karis advises him carefully. The conversation turns personal as Kip presses Karis about her past with Gavin and Dazin, sensing lies about his father. Karis deflects but reassures him that the man he calls father is not a rapist. She admits she spread the song of Kip's heroism at the Battle of Rue because he may one day need a name and reputation. Reflecting on the brutal moral ambiguity of war, Karis struggles with guilt over her own hidden past. When Kip jokingly calls her mother, her buried shame erupts and she angrily rejects him, deeply wounding him. In Chapter 67, Marisha meets Taya publicly and tells her this will be their last meeting, confirming Taya now answers to a new handler. Taya admits she wants to tell Kip everything because the burden of secrecy is overwhelming. Marisha warns her against entangling her heart with a Guile, admitting from experience that loving one brings pain and imbalance. Marisha then speaks seriously about the Order. She reveals she became a slave at 16 and endured harsh demands, warning Taya that the Order will test her and require unspeakable acts. She commands Taya to obey when that time comes, placing responsibility for Taya's future sins on herself and the White. They are fighting a greater enemy, and Taya will understand in time. After Marisha leaves, Taya feels abandoned and alone. She reflects that she has already killed once in secret and knows she will be required to kill again for the Order. Accepting this inevitability, she prepares to meet Murder Sharp. In Chapter 68, Oliviana meets her father, Corvin Danavis, unexpectedly in a tavern in Wiwur. Corvin reveals he has relocated the people of Garriston to Sears Island, founded a new city called the City of Gold with Gavin Guile's help, regained Tyria's seat on the Spectrum, become a satrap, and remarried a seer who guided him to Liv's location. He also reveals Gavin is now enslaved. Their conversation turns ideological. Corvin challenges Liv's support of the Color Prince, confronting her about the atrocities at Rue, and revealing that after taking Raven Rock, hundreds of women leapt to their deaths rather than face his forces. Liv is shaken, forced to question her role in past destruction. Before leaving, Corvin warns that visiting Liv may cost his seer wife her life, due to assassins hidden from her visions. After he departs, Liv discovers a hidden superviolet message under the table instructing her to hide a knife in her boot and tell no one. In Chapter 69, Taya meets Murder Sharp in his quarters, where he reveals others have told him she may surpass him and hopes he will kill her out of jealousy. Instead of killing her, he attacks, swiftly subdues, and binds her to demonstrate his superiority. He terrifies her deliberately, asserting dominance and making clear he owns her fate. Sharp then launches into a distorted theological tale about Orolum, the Lightbearer, and the nature of light and rebellion. He reframes invisibility and darkness as symbols of freedom rather than sin, arguing that hiding is not always shameful, and that light should not be controlled. He warns Taya that the Luxiats will never trust a peril drafter like her, as they fear what they cannot see. Cutting her bonds, he shifts from intimidation to indoctrination, teaching that those who serve in darkness are neither slaves to light nor evil. When he asks what a fearless woman can never be again, Taya answers, a slave. In Chapter 70, Kip trains alone after his painful confrontation with Karis, hoping to see Taya but finding only solitude. He vents his frustration in the exercise chamber, where Commander Iron Fist finds him damaging a training bag. Instead of punishing him, Iron Fist allows Kip to continue, acknowledging his need to release anger. Iron Fist dismisses Lytos' hesitation as irrelevant, maintaining that traitors deserve no sympathy. Later, Kip goes to the baths seeking privacy and emotional relief. There, Thesis Malargos reveals she arranged the meeting to speak privately. She explains her family is in danger, with their lands vulnerable to the Color Prince and their lineage near collapse. Her cousin is likely dead, and her sister cannot continue the family line, leaving Theseus responsible for saving her people. Admitting she was willing to sacrifice herself for political survival, she instead proposes an alliance with Kip. She shocks him by asking him to marry her, offering partnership to protect both their futures. In Chapter 71, Taya continues her secret training under Murder Sharp, learning advanced truths about peril. He reveals that peril heightens empathy, making most drafters deeply affected by others' emotions, though he claims to be immune. He teaches her new resonance points, including peril gas, and assigns her to practice forming a fragile peril bubble filled with gas to heighten her sensitivity to light. He suggests peril acts as a sieve, sharpening perception of other colors, and reverently calls it the master color. While she practices, Sharp interrupts her and gives her a mission to prove her loyalty: infiltrate the White's chambers and steal shimmer cloaks. He provides climbing tools and instructions to leave no trace. The Order suspects 2 cloaks are hidden there and warns her trust depends on retrieving them. Before dismissing her, Sharp hints that ancient peril masters, called Mistwalkers, could achieve invisibility without shimmer cloaks, implying Taya may someday do the same. In Chapter 72, Taya prepares to steal the shimmer cloaks from the White's chambers. Calming her fear by practicing her peril bubble supported only by gas, she successfully maintains it while moving. She reaches prudence level unseen, finds the rope as promised, and climbs the tower using crescent luxon anchors, carefully leaving no trace. Inside the White's dark chamber, she locates a single burned shimmer cloak in the desk but finds no second cloak. Realizing the mission may be a test and that only she can properly use the cloak, she takes just the one. As she prepares to leave, blackguard Baya Neal enters with a yellow lux torch. Taya freezes but remains unseen. Her peril cloud and the single spectrum yellow light allow her to unintentionally light split and become effectively invisible. She escapes down the tower just as he checks the balcony. After returning the rope to an unseen accomplice, she descends to safety, only to encounter Kip, while Murder Sharp follows invisibly to overhear their conversation. In Chapter 73, Kip tells Taya he doesn't expect to remain a blackguard. As a Guile, he believes political forces will eventually pull him out, and he fears losing both his position and his friends. He explains that marriage to Theseus Malargos would secure a powerful alliance and asks Taya for one reason not to accept Theseus' proposal. Taya is stunned into silence, and Kip interprets her reaction as rejection. Overcome with humiliation and heartbreak, he flees. In the training room, Kip vents his fury on the heavy bag, streaming red and sub-red luxon until he tears it from its chains. Cutting it open, he discovers Janus Borg's hidden card box placed there by Gavin. Inside are her powerful Nine Kings cards. As Kip lifts the deck, the cards leap onto his skin, unleashing overwhelming surges of multi-spectrum power. Visions flood him. Memories and experiences from others, flashes of history and forbidden incarnative drafting. Rheasilus appears, warning him that his heart has stopped and he must escape or die as the light consumes him. In Chapter 74, Murder Sharp confronts Taya after Kip leaves. He mocks Kip as weakness and suggests Taya may one day be ordered to kill him to prove loyalty. Taya defiantly hands over the stolen shimmer cloak and climbing crescents, admitting she lost one while escaping. Sharp searches her physically for hidden items, then confirms she retrieved only the burned cloak. He hints the mission may have been a test, but accepts the cloak, warning her to survive what comes next. After he leaves, Taya wrestles with her feelings about Kip and her anger over Theseus' proposal. Realizing she mishandled Kip's confession, she resolves to find him before he does something reckless. She hurries to the training room and finds Kip unconscious on the floor, the heavy bag torn open, and 9 Kings cards scattered around him. His skin is cold, his eyes swirling with fading colors, and he is not breathing. As Taya tears the cards from his body, the colors recede. Kip appears dead. In Chapter 75, Kip finds himself in the Great Library, a timeless repository of all written knowledge while his physical body lies dying. There he meets Abaddon, the immortal Lightbringer, who offers to save him and reveals Kip's heart has stopped. Kip refuses and learns that time still affects him here. If he delays, he will return brain damaged or dead. Realizing the library contains the knowledge stored in Janus Borg's 9 Kings cards, Kip discovers their images tattooed on his body. To survive, he must relive each card's life and extract its knowledge. He immerses himself in card after card, enduring their battles, atrocities, and deaths, nearly breaking under the accumulated trauma. Abaddon copies the cards during this process and attempts to stop Kip, but Kip chooses the turtle bear over the Lightbringer card and attacks him physically. Abaddon is expelled by a higher power. Rhea-Silus appears, hinting at deeper truths. Exhausted and dying, Kip collapses as his time runs out. In Chapter 76, Tia believes Kip is dead and is overwhelmed with grief and regret over her unresolved feelings. Refusing to accept his death, she uses peril and raw will to force his stopped heart to beat again. After several desperate attempts, Kip revives. Disoriented, Kip gives Tia a powerful living cloak, later revealed to be the original Shimmer Cloak, able to shift colors at her will. He also discovers that Janus Borig's 9 Kings cards are now blank. He has absorbed their knowledge, destroying their physical forms. This endangers him as Andros expects the deck. Karis arrives and questions Kip about the destroyed training bag and his use of venting. Their tense exchange is interrupted by Samite, who has lost part of her hand, destroying a yellow bane, and is retiring from field duty. Samite brings urgent news. A young lord named Xymon has arrived on Big Jasper, claiming to be Karis' son, and the White demands Karis report immediately. In Chapter 77, Karis reels from the news that Xymon, claiming to be her son, has arrived. She goes to the White, who dismisses all attendance and speaks to her privately. Instead of addressing Xymon immediately, the White reflects on legacy, power, and service. She reveals she will die on Sunday, 3 days away, and forbids argument. She shows Karis an invention by Ben-Hadad that may revolutionize Luxon use, then takes her to watch the sunset. There, she explains that drafters are like the 1,000 stars, elevated only to bring light into darkness. The White reveals she knew from the beginning that Gavin was truly Dazan and chose not to expose him. She also admits she has always known about Karis' son. Finally, she gives Karis a message. The Most High will repay you for the years the locusts have eaten, urging her to release bitterness. She entrusts Karis with secret papers and asks her to forgive her. In Chapter 78, Gavin remains imprisoned, fed but ignored, his guards treating him with pity rather than fear. Stripped of his prismatic eyes and power, he realizes how much of his authority depended on magic and image. The Nukaba visits and reveals she has reached an agreement with Andros and Irene. Gavin will be sold back to his father after facing public justice. For assaulting her, he will be blinded in the stadium where he once ruled. His eyes will be burned out one at a time. Afterward, on the voyage home, an assassin loyal to her will kill him to ensure he never reveals what she has said. She admits she no longer truly serves Orhalam, instead cultivating worship of herself. Alone, Gavin confronts his guilt over stealing his brother's life and power. He realizes the Nukaba is likely being manipulated by the Color Prince. Despite flashes of defiance, dread overwhelms him as the summons comes. It is time for his blinding. In Chapter 79, Kip is reeling from visions and pain when Tia urges him to flee before Andros summons him. She has arranged passage with a captain called Two Gunben, but Andros arrives before Kip can act. Andros reveals he knows about Thesis' plan to elope and offers Kip a bargain. Marry Thesis, become his spy within House Malargos, survive, and one day inherit everything. Zemun will be named Prism, but prisms rarely last long. Refuse, and Kip will not live another day. Kip lies about Janus Borig's cards, claiming Gavin destroyed them after Kip briefly saw their contents. He invents a list of card names, mixing truth and fiction, and hands over a box of blank cards. Andros believes Gavin erased them. When Andros asks about a Lightbringer card, Kip claims it was him, then mocks the idea. Andros warns him that Xymon will be named Prism-elect at dawn, and that Kip must choose, become Andros' spy and live, or remain and die before sunset. In Chapter 80, titled Black Luxon, Kip experiences another overwhelming card memory, this time from Gavin Guile's childhood. Young Dazan runs through his family's new home on Big Jasper to find his mother, Felia Guile, who is meeting with Lady Janus Borig. Dazan shows charm and intelligence, but Janus bluntly warns Felia that he is dangerously gifted. Bright, handsome, spoiled, and capable of becoming a monster. The conversation turns to Black Luxon. Janus insists Dazan must be told the truth about it, even if it brings nightmares. She implies that shielding him from harsh realities will only make him more dangerous. As the memory unfolds, Kip realizes he is not merely viewing it, he is living it. The vision abruptly ends with the click of his door latch in the present. Back in his room, Kip understands the truth. He did not trigger or erase Janusborg's cards. He absorbed them. Every card. And he is certain the flood of memories will eventually drive him mad. In Chapter 81, Taya pretends to leave after Andros dismisses her, but instead activates her new shimmer cloak. Overcoming her revulsion at wearing the collar that powers it, she bonds with the cloak and realizes it contains the light-splitting mastery of a former Mistwalker. She understands that using it will teach her advanced light manipulation, and that she may be uniquely suited to mastering peril invisibility. Invisible, she follows Andros from the Cremeria to the Guile estate, slipping past blackguards and light guards. Inside, she overhears key information. Andros plans to meet Simon privately, intends to manipulate him through a hired prostitute, and is carefully controlling political moves involving Irene Malargos. Taya also witnesses an unexpected moment of vulnerability as Andros mourns his late wife, revealing emotional depth beneath his ruthlessness. Hidden in his chambers, Taya realizes the terrifying extent of her new power. She can infiltrate anywhere and kill without risk. She understands she has become something dangerous, and that discovery frightens her. In Chapter 82, Taya continues spying inside the Guile estate. She narrowly avoids detection by light guards and overhears a crucial conversation between Andros Guile and Murder Sharp. Sharp confirms he has placed peril crystals around a woman's heart so she will quietly die. Almost certainly the White. Andros is satisfied and expects her to be dead by morning, ensuring no obstacle to naming Xymon Prism-elect. Taya also witnesses Andros manipulating Xymon, testing his intelligence and loyalty, and threatening to replace him with Kip if he proves incompetent. Andros reveals that without the Blinder's knife, he cannot immediately secure Xymon's full power, but plans to make him Prism-elect at dawn. Realizing the White is still alive but in imminent danger, Taya battles the temptation to assassinate Andros and Xymon herself. Remembering her blackguard oath to protect rather than avenge, she chooses duty over impulse. She escapes the estate and races back to the Cremeria to try to save the White before it is too late. In Chapter 83, Gavin is transported to the Hippodrome to be publicly blinded. Despite faint hope of rescue, none comes. He is disguised to prevent recognition, and Captain Euthios, an old soldier who once served him, realizes he is Dazen but cannot betray his current oath. Gavin refuses to let the man ruin himself attempting a futile rescue, and instead asks him to secretly send word to Karis that the Nukaba plans to have him assassinated after his blinding. Irene Malargos visits and confirms she will not intervene. Political necessity and alliance with the Nukaba outweigh Gavin's fate. She warns him he is no longer Prism, and that a Prism-elect will be named tomorrow. Raised into the roaring stadium, Gavin faces the crowd's bloodlust. Bound to a table, he considers drafting Black Luxon to unleash destruction and escape. At the final moment, he chooses restraint over damnation. The white-hot poker descends, and his eye is burned as he screams. In Chapter 84, Karis learns at dawn that Gavin is to be executed that day in wrath. With almost no time, she gathers a small, trusted group of blackguards and races upriver in a hastily drafted skimmer to attempt a rescue. Iron Fist joins her despite calling the plan reckless, bringing Ben-Hadad, whose engineering skill becomes crucial. Near the Hippodrome's canal entrance, they realize a direct assault would be suicidal. Instead, Ben-Hadad fits Karis with nearly invisible contact lenses to hide her drafting colors, disguising her as a noblewoman. While Essel and Ben-Hadad secure the skimmer for escape, Karis, Iron Fist, and Hezek infiltrate the structure by scaling a high exterior wall. From a sentry walkway, Karis confirms Gavin is already bound on the spina for punishment. With no key and no time, she and Iron Fist attempt a dangerous second ascent through an upper arch. Iron Fist boosts her, and after a near fall, she manages to tumble inside the packed stadium. She rises unnoticed among the crowd, now close enough to act. In Chapter 85, Liv and Firos reach the summit of the Everdark Gates after a grueling climb. During the night, Liv discovers her pistols have been secretly unloaded and realizes someone has betrayed her. She then sees the superviolet seed crystal suspended above the gates, drawing streams of superviolet light toward it. Transfixed, Liv moves toward the crystal, but Firos stops her, insisting she must wear the black jewel as the color prince ordered. When she confronts him, he attacks, seizing her and disarming her. At the cliff's edge, he demands she choose between submitting to the black jewel or death. Instead, Liv uses a hidden blade her father gave her and stabs Pyrrhus fatally. As he dies, she steps past his body and faces the crystal. Drawn by its power and clarity, she calls to it with superviolet luxin. The seed crystal responds, flying into her hand. In Chapter 86, Karis reaches the spina just as the chirurgeon lowers a red-hot poker to blind Gavin's remaining eye. Drafting a small, nearly invisible green projectile, she knocks the poker aside, disrupting the execution. Declaring Gavin her husband, she demands trial by combat and publicly threatens to reveal his identity as Gavin Guile. The Nukaba, seizing the opportunity, names her champion Enki Hammer and forbids drafting. Feigning innocence, Karis activates a hidden thigh scabbard and kills Enki in a single lightning-fast strike, then beheads him and throws the head into the Nukaba's lap. She frees Gavin, and chaos erupts as Irene Malargos counters the Nukaba's order to kill them. With help from Captain Euthios, they flee through the Hippodrome and leap from the upper tier. Iron Fist breaks through enemy drafters and joins them at the river. Under heavy attack, Karis defends the skimmer until Iron Fist boards. Gavin, half-blind and grievously wounded, fires a musket to save Iron Fist before collapsing as they escape downriver. In Chapter 87, Kip is recovering in his room when Tysus visits and demands his decision about marrying her, as she must flee the Chromeria immediately. She explains her belongings are already smuggled aboard a ship and that their marriage must be official to prevent Andros from annulling it. Kip realizes the political marriage benefits both families, strengthens alliances during the war, and protects Thesis, but also places him under Andros' control and risk. Kip recognizes that Andros treats people as expendable pieces in his pursuit of victory, meaning Kip's survival depends on remaining useful. Despite fearing his grandfather and the consequences, Kip understands refusing would gain nothing and isolate him from allies. He agrees to marry Thesis, and they plan to wed secretly at dawn. Their interaction grows more personal, building mutual trust and attraction, though they delay consummating the marriage. As Thesis hides in his room, Taya suddenly arrives, urgently seeking Kip. In Chapter 88, Karis, Iron Fist, and their squad return by boat to Big Jasper after rescuing Gavin, navigating through the night using Ben-Hadad's astrolabe. Gavin remains gravely wounded, missing an eye, and weakened. Karis and Iron Fist realize Gavin's remaining eye is blue, confirming he is no longer a prism, meaning the Spectrum will likely name a new prism immediately. Iron Fist reveals long-standing suspicions about secret ceremonies and unexplained deaths among the Spectrum, suggesting hidden forces control prism succession. Karis realizes Gavin's ignorance of these secrets stemmed from his true identity as Dazen and his constant fear of exposure. Understanding the political danger, Karis takes command. She orders Essel and Ben-Hadad to secretly take Gavin disguised as the dead blackguard Hezek to trusted chirurgeons instead of the Chromeria. Meanwhile, Karis and Iron Fist return to the Chromeria to confront the coming political crisis, while Gavin urges her to act quickly against Andros' plans. In Chapter 89, Taya urgently finds Kip and reveals that Andros hired an assassin from the Broken Eye to kill the White using a hidden peril trap around her heart. Taya believes she may be the only one capable of saving her. Kip gathers the mighty and fights past light guards to reach the White's chambers, allowing Taya to secretly attempt to disrupt the trap. Taya discovers the trap is designed to kill the White, whether she interferes or not. The White awakens, already aware of her impending death, and calmly prepares for it. She reveals her room slave has long been spying for Andros, but forgives her. She confirms the Spectrum is meeting to name Xymon Prism-elect. Before dying, the White gives Kip her Nine Kings card and tells him not only prisms fly, hinting at hidden truths. As Kip and the Mighty attempt to leave, Grinwoody intercepts them, announcing that Andros demands Kip's immediate presence. In Chapter 90, Kip and the Mighty follow Grinwoody to the Spectrum level, where Aram and Light Guards attempt to disarm them. Kip refuses, asserting that blackguards themselves are weapons, and Grinwoody clears the way. Privately, Grinwoody reveals Andros' plan: a staged public accusation, Kip's exile, and a narrow window to escape and marry Thesis before leaving the Jaspers. Instead of a private confrontation, Andros publicly accuses Kip and the Mighty of murder and forming a private army. Commander Iron Fist intervenes, unknowingly disrupting the plan. Seizing the opportunity, Andros strips Iron Fist of his commission and publicly exiles Kip, threatening to destroy the Blackguard if Iron Fist resists. Kip leaves in shock and fury, followed by the squad and Iron Fist. Aram taunts them but is quietly knocked down by Big Leo. Karis arrives, learns the White is dead, and heads into the council chamber to confront the unfolding political crisis as Kip faces exile. In Chapter 91, Zaimoon sits on the dais wearing the crown of Prism-elect, but resents not yet having full power as Prism. He suspects Andros is controlling him and becomes suspicious when he overhears that Kip was secretly given time to escape, realizing Andros intends Kip to survive for his own purposes. Seeking to undermine his grandfather's plans, Zaimoon leaves the ceremony and orders Lieutenant Aram and the Light Guard to capture Kip. Privately, he clarifies that capture means kill, instructing Aram to use any force necessary and quietly seal exits, including shutting down lifts and guarding key escape routes like the Lily's stem bridge and docks. Aram eagerly obeys, mobilizing the Light Guard to hunt Kip down. Zaimoon returns to the ceremony satisfied, believing he has seized control of events and eliminated Kip as both a rival and a tool of Andros' influence. In Chapter 92, Kip tells Iron Fist they have 1 hour before pursuit begins. In the Blackguard barracks, Iron Fist reveals that Karis rescued Gavin, who is alive but gravely injured and unable to serve as Prism. Kip must not go to him as enemies do not yet know Gavin lives. An emergency crystal signals danger, confirming time is short. Iron Fist explains he cannot accompany Kip, or the staged falling out with Andros will be exposed and the Blackguard fractured. Iron Fist makes it clear that any who follow Kip will be permanently expelled. Cruxer volunteers first, followed by Fakudi, Edgar, Big Leo, Goss, Taya, Winson, and Ben-Hadad. They formally resign, surrendering their insignia. Iron Fist gives them new black uniforms and patches bearing the symbol of the Mighty, prepared in advance by Andros, along with weapons and supplies. Iron Fist sends them off with a blessing. As they leave, Light Guards intercept them and demand to know which one is Kip. Goss falsely claims to be him, just as a musket fires. In Chapter 93, after escaping the Light Guard's ambush, Kip and the squad fight their way down the slave's stairwell. Goss is killed by a musket shot meant for Kip, confirming the Light Guards intend to kill them, not capture them. The tower's defenses activate, sealing the lift shafts and darkening the stairwell, trapping them inside. Delos rejoins them despite earlier refusing, but later breaks his ankle during the escape and must be left behind disguised as a Light Guard. Magister Kadas secretly helps them, providing mag torches and revealing. The Light Guards believe the squad is still above. Kip uses a massive green Luxon sphere to break through Light Guard formations, though he nearly suffocates inside it. The squad reaches the main level, but discovers heavy Light Guard forces blocking all exits. Remembering the White's final clue, Kip realizes she knew of a secret escape route near her quarters and orders the squad to go back up the tower despite the danger. In Chapter 94, the Mighty attempt to escape via the White's hidden mechanism on the tower roof as Light Guards breach the door. Kip activates an ancient cable system leading to Cannon Island and Big Jasper, but the first line plunges into the sea. Realizing there are multiple routes, Kip and Taya trigger a second cable running to Big Jasper. Ben-Hadad warns of possible civilian casualties, but Kip releases the massive counterweight anyway, and the line snaps taut safely over the city walls. As the Light Guards advance behind a shield wall, Kip uses Red Luxon to ignite panic and buy time. One by one, the squad rides the cable across the city using pulley mechanisms. When Taya's mechanism is discovered corroded and unusable, Kip insists they escape together. Lieutenant Aram shoots and destroys their wheel attachment at the last moment. Thinking fast, Kip drafts solid yellow Luxon around the cable and uses orange as lubrication, turning their improvised rig into a working slide. Together they leap from the tower, flying across the bay, escaping the Chromeria, and in the exhilaration of survival, Kip and Taya share their first kiss mid-air. In Chapter 95, High Luxiat Amazal seals the convocation chamber and announces that 7 candidates, including Karis, will be considered for selection as the new White. Drafting is forbidden under penalty of death, and each candidate is stripped, searched, and given identical robes to prevent cheating. Karis realizes that the late White, Aurea Palaur, deliberately arranged for her inclusion. The candidates are placed on a platform extended from the Prism's tower and must each choose one of 7 identical white stones. As the ceremony unfolds, distant musket fire and the collapse of a massive crenellation draw Karis' attention, and she sees a steel cable snap taut toward Big Jasper with someone flying along it. When only 2 stones remain, Karis senses manipulation. Scratching one pedestal, she discovers an orange Luxon hex meant to influence the chooser. She selects the unhexed stone. Jason Jorvis and Akensis Asmith attack her to seize it, but Karis defeats them and kicks both men to their deaths. Her stone is revealed as the true one, and Karis becomes the new white, declaring that they are at war. In Chapter 96, Kip and Taya land safely on Big Jasper and reunite with Cruxer, Furcuti, Big Leo, Winson, Ben-Hadad, and Tremblefist. Tremblefist warns them that hundreds of light guards are searching for them and that the harbor cannons will sink their ship if they attempt to flee. Using keys and misdirection, Tremblefist guides them through hidden gates toward the docks. At the Red Dock, Tysus Malargos and a Luxiad await. With light guards closing in, Kip quickly signs a Ruthgari wedding contract with Tysus to secure Malargos' protection. As the ceremony concludes, Taya declares she will remain behind to fulfill the White's secret mission. Kip and Tysus board the galleass while the squad covers their escape. Taya disrupts pursuing light guards invisibly, and Tremblefist destroys the harbor cannon battery, ensuring the ship's safe departure. As they sail away, Kip regains clarity and embraces his role as breaker. He announces they will not remain in Hrothgar, but instead travel to Blood Forest to confront the Color Prince. In Chapter 97, Iron Fist arrives at the chirurgeon's house to find Gavin Guile and the Blackguards gone. Grinwoody confronts him and reveals Gavin has been taken by Andros. The Blackguard guarding him is dead. Iron Fist delivers a hidden Zeracote box he recovered for the White. Grinwoody unlocks it using Iron Fist's broken commander's pin, revealing the Black Seed Crystal, the secret weapon that can kill prisms and quench Luxon. Grinwoody explains the true purpose of the Blackguard: to guard this crystal for the Order of the Broken Eye. Iron Fist's Ulta, his life's sacred task, was to secure it, and he has succeeded. Ashamed of his divided loyalties, Iron Fist removes his Gotra. Grinwoody then asks the crucial question: who is Kip Guile? Iron Fist declares Kip the Breaker, the Lightbringer, and the Diacopt is reborn. Grinwoody sends Iron Fist to find Kip and choose his path, serve him, save him, or kill him, before he destroys the Order or the world. Epilogue 1. A massive explosion rocks Big Jasper during Sunday celebrations. Iron Fist runs toward the harbor and discovers the cannon tower guarding the bay has detonated from within. The blast destroyed its powder stores and launched debris skyward. Among the wreckage, Iron Fist finds evidence of sabotage, including a light guard slain before the explosion. At the water's edge, Iron Fist discovers Tremblefist alive, but mortally wounded. Tremblefist reveals he destroyed the tower to prevent the light guards from using the harbor cannons to sink the Lightbringer's ship. He fought through the tower, set the fuse, escaped by climbing to the top, and leapt into the sea before the explosion. Fatally injured from the blast and falling debris, Tremblefist tells Iron Fist he came to the Chromaria to protect him, and now asks which oath Iron Fist will honor, his oath to the Order of the Broken Eye or to the Lightbringer. Tremblefist dies, leaving Iron Fist torn between irreconcilable loyalties. Epilogue 2. Gavin awakens bruised, naked, and imprisoned in a small circular cell. His missing eye is bandaged, and he slowly realizes he is confined in the very blue Luxon prison he once built for his brother. The cell has been repaired, meaning someone powerful has discovered it. Understanding the implications, Gavin realizes his father, Andros Guile, is now his captor. If Andros found this prison, he has uncovered all the secrets hidden within it: the deception at Sundered Rock, Dazen's long impersonation of Gavin, and the murder of Andros' eldest son in the Yellow Cell. Stripped of power, title, identity, and even his assumed name, Gavin finally confronts the truth. He is no longer Gavin Guile, but Dazen, exposed and helpless. Andros now knows everything and intends to exact punishment. Trapped in the passionless blue prison he designed, Dazen understands that his father plans to make him pay for his crimes.